putting in place, or at least situating the role of the legislature, whether at the federal, state, or local level. In the case of Nigeria, since 1999, the legislature has been in the spotlight for all the reasons, right and wrong. This is the 10th National Assembly that we have today, and it has also seen perhaps a little more than its own fair share of criticism for things it either hasn't done at all or has failed to do properly. We've seen instances where the legislature has been referred to as, quote, rubber stamp. The question is, as it stands today, for a country like Nigeria that has been, quote unquote, experimenting with democracy for virtually 27 years, where exactly are we? Can we say the gains, if any, that we recorded so far are commensurate with the efforts that have been put in, the work that has been put in, and are they in tandem with the expectations of citizens in a country where you have over 200 million real human beings? To help us put this in context and establish perspectives, we're joined by a gentleman who is an accomplished lawyer, distinguished legislator, one who has spent so many decades in public service, in the process pursuing notable reforms and staying committed to participatory governance. Barrister Onofiok, look, I'd like to say a big thank you to you.
Thank you, sir, and welcome.
Thank you.
Great. I was scared of your first name. It's a bit tongue twisting. I had to speak with a colleague from your place, by the way, to be sure I would get it right.
And you've gotten it right.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, you are not new to the public space, apparently. We talk about public service a lot. People say we're just being theoretical about these things. When you look at the concept of public service, vis-a-vis what we have in Nigeria today, are we just filling up space, taking up titles without actually understanding the concept of service in itself?
To best answer that question, we have to look at it from historical perspective, and right from independence of Nigeria, right from those who had the opportunity to save. And we've had a mix of people, a hybrid, or a mix, let me use the word mix, in the sense that we've had people who understands what it takes to serve in public service. And then we have those who are just looking at the perks, the privileges of office, and that has been their driving force, what propels them into public service. And that reminds me, last Thursday, I had the opportunity to attend the 50th anniversary of the assassination of General Muritala Muhammad. And then I got to hear things, deep things, when General Olusegun Obasanjo mounted the podium and then to speak as the chairman of the occasion, spoke about the achievement of that government in 200 days. 200 days. And every other person spoke. The former president of Malawi told the same line. We had the former president of Ghana told the same line, speaking about someone who had the opportunity to create impact in 200 days. And that just come to mind because that has been fresh in my memory. But so coming to the democratic setting, we've had people who have served diligently well, who understands their calling, who understands the demands of every of the offices they've had to occupy. Whether we've had chairmen of local government who have left a mark at the grassroots. Right. We've had members of the House of Assembly who are members of the legislature, both at the state, at the national level, whose voice have been heard advocating for pro-people legislation, pro-people policy. In this country, we've had, we can recall presidents who have acted in a manner that speaks to the fact that they understand what it means to be the president of a country. And then we've had cases of governors too, who had delivered on dividends of democracy, infrastructural development, and has been in sync with the demands and the interests of the people who gave them the mandate to serve. So we've had those two who have seen the public service as maybe an opportunity to enrich themselves, an opportunity to get titles, and opportunities to get fame. So it's a mix. But gradually, we are declining Gradually, we are declining. We used to have people who were known for things. Right now, it's sad, it's challenging to hear that a whole lot of people, so many people in the political space, are not known for anything. They just go anywhere the wind goes. That's where they go. They don't, even where the wind goes, they follow the wind. And then if the wind tosses left, they go to the left. If it goes right, it goes to the right. So they don't have the conviction. They don't have that mindset of, purpose. It starts with purpose and mission, which would clarity or vision. So we are declining, and I pray that we don't get to the best level.
Okay, so let's talk about democracy in respect to our legislative institutions. Now, more than ever before, I feel like the age we're in, the internet age, makes every Nigerian somehow aware of rights and everything. And I feel like it's impacting our legislative institutions. But from your experience at both state and national levels, how would you assess so far? How would you assess the current strength of Nigeria's legislative institutions?
That's putting me on. That's putting me on the big spot, because looking at the leadership, I must say this conflict of interest. Looking at the leadership, I served in the last National Assembly, and so the present Speaker of the House of Representatives, right now, Tajuddin Abbas, was a member of my committee as Chairman, House Committee on Judiciary, and he was my colleague. And then the Deputy Speaker too were together. And then the Chairman of the National Assembly, the Senate President, happens to come from my state. And then if you look at that, you see a whole lot of conflict of interest. But public service demands some level of decorum, demands some level of, clear level of character and integrity and passion. And then more of that is demanded from a legislator, because you are holding the collective mandate of the people. You see, the closest form of government, closest form of arm of government to the people is the legislature, because it's seen as the representative of the people's yearnings, the representative of the people's aspiration, the people's collective mandate. And so, not to talk of where you are made the first amongst equal, the leadership. I serve as the Speaker of the House of Assembly. I know the demands. The demands on the headship of the legislature is more. But you see, the legislature is not the headship per se. It's only in the case of the docility of the members of the legislature that the leadership seems to be looming very large. Because the leadership of the legislature is just a first amongst equal. The Senate President is first amongst equal. The Speaker of the House of Assembly is first among equal. The Speaker of the House of Representatives is first among equal. The leader of the Local Government Legislative Council is the first amongst equal. And so they are the first line of accountability. If they don't hold the leadership accountable, then that is where failure begins. So if, for instance, the leadership of the National Assembly is not the chairman of all the committees of the National Assembly. Let's take the issue of oversight function. And you're supposed to perform your function. You have, the legislature does the budgeting. It has the power of the purse in the bicameral legislature like we have in Nigeria. The power of the purse really lies with the House of Representatives. And so having appropriated, you ought to, within that fiscal year, to oversee and oversight the ministries, the departments and agencies that you have appropriated the sum for. And so if you fail in the performance of that function, you can't come to hold the leadership of the National Assembly to account. You begin to hold the chairman of the committee, members of the committee. What have they done? What is the level of, how have they been able to hold the executive and other arms of government to account in this? But on the other hand too, because of Barack Obama said something some time ago that we have strong men rather than strong institutions.
Right.
And that is playing out clearly in Nigeria today. And so because of the weakening of the institutions today as we have in the country, so we have positions, people in positions getting larger and more powerful than the institutions that they actually get elected into. And so because of that, too many things can be done and be gotten away, and everyone is putting the blame on the doorsteps, at the doorsteps of the leadership of the legislature. So today, Nigerians are asking for accountability in so many things. Just last week, and I think which is still continuing agitations, though it is not as loud as it was before the Senate had to make some level of changes in the proposed Electoral Act. You could see the demands of Nigerians asking that the Senate, the pressure was not in the House of Representatives because the House of Representatives had already taken a position, has passed their own version of the bill.
Right.
But Nigerians were advocating, agitating, and then protesting, asking for the amendment of that act as passed by the Senate to reflect their yearnings and aspirations, which is the real-time electronic transmission of result. And so, with that, I think for me, I made mention earlier that it is not only the leadership that has to blame. We have to begin to hold each of our representatives accountable. Yeah. You cannot just come and say, oh, the leadership has failed to do this, the leadership has done this. All what you need to do is, how have we engaged those we have elected? How have we engaged them? Part of the lessons I learned from, and I applied when I was in the legislature, is what the Americans do with their constituents. And so their congressmen, if they cannot have access to them, they consistently write to their congressmen about what they want and what they desire. And which is why constituency briefing and engagement is quite very key and critical in strengthening democratic governance in any space. So for us today, we have the challenge today in the leadership of not just the legislature, is the country as a whole, is that we have strong men as against strong institutions, and that does not augur well for our democratic governance. It does not augur well for the growth of the country. It does not augur well for, it does not augur well for the development of our own country.
I want to ask you something about the independence of the legislature. I come from a state, for example, where at the point, we had a situation where about half a dozen, if you will, people who had been elected by their own different constituencies into the State House Assembly were not inaugurated because the governor has his personal interest at that point in time, and there was this sort of black market inauguration that was said to have been done late into the night and all of that. And up until that entire tenure elapsed, those gentlemen, about 6 or so of them, were never inaugurated. At a point, they even had to move their sittings into a small hall inside, more like an office space inside a government house. We've seen that happen across many states in our country. For that reason, the legislature has been referred to as a rubber stamp, either they are strapped to the apron strings of the governor at the state level, or they are the beck and call of the president at the federal level. And we've seen that happen even with the 10th National Assembly, for example. When you look at that since 1999 till date, are you not concerned? Are you not even afraid that the institution known as the legislature is gradually getting eroded?
Yeah, you've painted a clear picture of the reality. The reality is this, and I say this with all sense of responsibility. The reality with the legislature, let me start at the state level.
Right.
The legislature at the state level is at the behest of the governor. as long as we have not been able to institutionalize legislative independence and autonomy. And it's difficult. I don't think there is any state today that will have a Speaker of the House of Assembly emerge as a Speaker of the House of Assembly without the endorsement of the governor.
And that's an error.
It's an error, but it's a reality. It's an error, but it's a reality. Reality in the sense that, let's start, the political process starts, the leadership recruitment process starts with the party primaries.
Right.
And we created a sort of abnormality, I call it an abnormality, where we said the governors are the leaders of the party in the state. And that makes them larger than the institutions in the state. It makes them larger than the party. In most cases, the governors don't listen to anybody except themselves. And so they determine who will represent which constituency within the party that they are the leaders. And so when that happens, you are expected to be loyal to the source from which you came from. And in this case, is the leader of the party, not the people who elected you. And so, assuming, let's have a hypothetical situation. A state has like 15 state constituencies, and then the leader of the party is able to influence the choice of up to about 10 or 12 of such members, first by ensuring that they get the party's ticket, they get the support to win the election, and they're inaugurated. Already, he has 12 members in his kitty. And tell me, who will oppose his choice of speakership?
He has the numbers.
He has the numbers. And he makes it look democratic without you seeing the invisible hands, the strings that pulls the things behind the scene. And so the question now is, how do we correct this abnormality? Strengthening our internal democracy is key. But every day we wake up to the things that are happening and we find out that it is not, it's like an uphill task, the way it is, to allow the will of the people to prevail in the choice of candidate for the party. Now, when that is done, the next stage is the general elections. What have we been able to do? What have we been able to put in place to ensure the credible elections, to ensure that the democratic space is enlarged, is safe and credible for participation of all and sundry, to be able, those who are qualified, to be able to stand for the election? And what have we put in place to ensure that this outcome, the outcome of the elections, are credible? And how are we positioning our judiciary, since we have brought in judiciary to play a very key role? We've made the judiciary part of the electorate. Because they are the determinants. The judiciary in most cases are the determinants of who are the elected members, who are the elected representative of the people, because of what we have seen through history.
Right.
And so how do we correct this? Is to strengthen internal democracy, strengthen our electoral system, and then position our judiciary to ensure that the role they have to play is that of an unbiased arbiter, an unbiased umpire in this electoral process that we have brought in the judiciary to have a role.
Okay, sir. So talking about our legislatives, time and again we see a disconnect between the people that are being served and the people and the person representing the people that are being served. There is always a disconnect. In passing of bills, appropriate bills are not passed. Some of the senators or some of our legislatives rather go to the House and we can stay silent for the whole of their term, right? And the people feel, okay, I'm supposed to be represented. We see bills that are not reflecting the reality reality of people. Again, I want to ask, how do we correct this anomaly, as you asked?
Okay. There is this docility that comes with the populace, with due respect to all. Immediately we finish the elections, we dissipate. The consciousness and awareness begins to mount again when the election approaches. And so like you've seen heightened political consciousness, you've seen heightened advocacies from different groups because we are approaching an election year. So if we were to engage this energy, that we engage close to political mean time of elections, in holding the people that we've elected into account, we would have made some progress. And so the way forward is we need to continue with the political education of the populace. We take it for granted, or we take it as given that because people listen to news, people make contributions towards political issues, that they are politically educated, they are aware. No, so we need to intensify political awareness, political enlightenment, and education. By that, I mean to say, how many of our people understand the core responsibilities of a legislator? Let's start with that elementary, which is lawmaking, oversight, and representation. And so what does these three entails? It is when you have an understanding of those core core function of your representative, that you will be able to fashion out the parameters to which you will hold them accountable. And so, first, in lawmaking, you should be able to, let's start from the local, because that is the one that is closer to the people. Let's start with the legislative councils. Local government legislative councils. Yeah. What are those things that they should legislate on? What are they actually doing? How do we get value for money? Because we have given them the mandate and they are being paid, and so they ought to give value back to the people. Yeah. And then you get to the state level, which has a great influence on the socioeconomic well-being of the people of that geographical expression as a state. How do you hold them to account? You look at the things that matter to the people, health care, you look at education, you look at security. And if there are areas that you think that executive policies don't make for maximum enforcement, you begin to approach the legislator to get legislative backing. For instance, I sat back when I got elected into the House of Assembly. I saw that we have a challenge in our primary healthcare system, and I did not waste my time. I had to go into consultation with some of the best brains in community health in my in my state. And then, because I am not a health expert, so I needed their advice. And they said, oh, we have failed to do ABCD. One of the things we were short of was the establishment of the State Primary Healthcare Development Agency. And then I saw that as a responsibility, took it upon myself, did consultation, get input, and were able to fashion out a bill that became a law that established the State Primary Healthcare Development Agency to coordinate activities of healthcare between the states and the local government. Another area still in the healthcare was that we found out that, yes, we've had much of derivation funds coming to the state. We've had federal allocation coming to the state. But we found out that people were still paying for healthcare out of pocket. And for those living in the local communities, it became a challenge. And we found out that some government, through executive policies, had done what we call free health education for the children under 5 years and then the aged. There was need to institutionalize it. And then I came up with a bill to establish the state health insurance scheme, which has helped to institutionalize those executive policies and has equally taken part of health funding and financing from the out-of-pocket expenditure of individuals for government to take care of. So For us to do that, let the people be educated and then hold the people to account. For instance, if government says we have done this, let the people go to, there's a particular committee in the House of Assembly and even in the National Assembly that is very key, called the Public Account Committee. They look at each fiscal year, the money given and what expenditure has been done to justify whether such money that has been released has been judiciously used. So approach the Public Account Committee and ask for the public account report of the state. It ought to be a public document. And even the public account sitting ought to be in the public space. And so with that, we can begin to hold the people to account and let the people stand to elect who they believe in. If you see in this country, look at states, look at local government, look at places where the people elect their representative or their leader. You find out that that leader, having known that power comes from the people, will do everything to please that people. One, for legacy purposes. Two, at least for selfish interest to be elected back into that office. Right. So, okay, these people gave me the mandate. Let me work and please them. But where the leaders emerge not from the popular will of the people, maybe by way of some endorsement by the political class or endorsement by the godfather, such leaders are only going to be loyal. So are only going to be loyal to the people that brought them or the process that threw them up as leaders. So let the people begin to be conscious, not go to sleep immediately after electing their leaders. Let them write offices. Let them go to let them ask every member, the moment you are elected, where is your constituency office? If they can't come to Abuja, let them write to their members and drop those letters at those constituency offices and demand response or reply of those letters that they have written to their representative.
So we're saying any Nigerian can take on this task?
It is. It's just education. It's just organization. For instance, when I got elected, I had a constituency office to a point that when I got elected in the House of Representatives, I said, just like the state will be having state secretariat and a government house for everyone that comes to use, I built a standalone, the very first time in my state. Wow. And I built a standalone constituency office, which my successor in the House of Representatives, Right Paul Ekbo, has named it after me, because I wanted to, while I tried as much as possible to always be going back home almost every weekend as at then, but where other social engagement did not allow me to go, and make sure that there was a structure that could give me that feedback, that communication between me and the people. Even when we had the PIA bill, even when we had there was this bill that was controversial, the water resources bill, I took it back to the people. I called the experts in those fields. I said, give me an input. I am not an expert here. Give me an input of what you think I would say, and then I would be gathering people in pockets, professionals who would advise and guide me on the stance I would take when I am making my contributions on this. So it's the level of awareness and consciousness that we will create. But we, the political class, don't want to create that consciousness because we want to perpetually hold the people down. Because when they are intelligible, when they are educated, when they are conscious, you find out that the table upon which we keep our food, which is on their back, will someday be thrown off if they have that consciousness.
Okay, so
okay, go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to ask, do you think we have enough synergy between local government or local council officials and, say, state legislatives or even federal legislatives?
Let me use, I want to speak using my own case, for instance. When I was in the House of Assembly, I was in constant relation with my chairman and the councillors of my place. When I got to the National Assembly, I was also in constant communication. And when I say constant communication, not just informal communication, I mean formal communication, to a point that I found out that still part of this creating awareness and consciousness, getting the legislator to understand what their responsibility is. As a Speaker of the House of Assembly, I did a training for the 329 councillors in my state to bring that synergy. As a Speaker of the House of Assembly, I created days where the leaders of the Legislative Council will be coming to the House of Assembly to observe our sittings. And then that really helped. And when I got to the National Assembly, I still continue with that thinking. I brought 33 councillors. This is not counting what I did. I'm just using this as this is not counting my achievement or blowing my trumpet.
More like empirical.
Just as maybe as a blueprint. I brought 33 councillors representing the 33 wards that constitute the 3 local governments that made up my federal constituency here to Abuja.
Wow.
All expenses paid, they flew.
Wow.
And then I brought them to Gotney, led by Linus Okorie, to be trained for a full week.
Wow.
On leadership, entrepreneurship development.
Right.
And then they got back, and since after then, they've been advocating.
Fantastic.
And I know that there are other persons too who are having an interaction. But some of those interactions might not occur in certain places because of political differences. And then you know that there's always this friction most times between the governors and members of the National Assembly in state. And so since the people in the local government are beholden to the governor.
Yeah.
And so if a member of the House of Assembly is not in a good relationship or state with the governor, it's difficult for him to have that relationship with the grassroots. It's going to be like a fight. In short, the people that are going to be used as the warheads
when two elephants fight.
Yes, are going to be those people at the local level. So, but that should be, it is something that should be, because most of the things I brought forward during matters of urgent public importance that affected my communities at the National Assembly, that I brought up before the National Assembly for consideration, were things that in that interaction, I asked the councillor, if you see anything that happens, let me know. The chairman of the local government, if you see any challenge, let me know. For instance, I remember that we had a rupture in a gas pipeline passing through my place. Immediately, I was informed by the chairman of the local government. I was informed too by the councillor of that ward. And then the member of the House of Assembly then wrote a letter to me. And then I took that matter. I was not at home, so I wouldn't have known it. I didn't want to depend only on the news or what I saw on the social media. I needed fact and figures. So that synergy between myself and my office and the local government chairman and the councillor and the member of the House of Assembly gave me the full fact, gave me all that I needed, the evidence I needed to make that presentation, and that caused I think the National Gas Company or so to act immediately to forestall a crisis in that community.
We're beginning to wind down now. Let's talk about something not just that is controversial, but it's of public interest as well. It has whipped up debates for a long time. It has to do with the remuneration of legislators, especially at the federal level. One time, even the former senator, Shehu Sani, spoke to some of these issues on social media, even published what he said were was the pay of legislators at that time. Is it possible, is it the case that legislators are afraid to put out what they earn? After all, it's Nigerians who have, quote unquote, hired them and paid them. If I hire you, if I elect you, if I pay you by way of being a taxpayer in my country, is it not only natural that I should know what you earn? The legislators don't seem to be, they seem to be secretive about it. What are the dynamics in that regard?
I don't think they are secretive with it. I don't know what the legislators earn as of today. In our days, it was not a hidden thing.
Your days been in 2019?
Yeah, 2019. And the members came out and it was in the public domain what the legislator earned. Because there are two things we need to clarify, and this is me speaking from my heart. This is not just trying to paint picture. There is what we call what you earn, and there is the impress, or what we call the running cost, which is actually for you to use in administering that office. Everybody do have it.
More like an overhead or something?
More like an overhead. It consists a whole lot of things. Your ticket is there to where you are going to, and you are most times, the funding of oversight is from there. Why do I say most times? For instance, I was a chairman House Committee on Judiciary. I think throughout my years, for 4 years as a member of the Judiciary, as the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, I think I got approval for only 2 million naira. 2 million naira approval that it took me 1 year to even access the money for oversight of the entire judiciary in the country, the Supreme Court, Court of Appeal, National Judicial Council, National Judicial Institute, Federal Judicial Service Commission, Body of Benchers, A whole lot, 2 million naira for 4 years. And so in such situation, where you have oversight, where you have to visit places, like I remember when we had to tour the country to see the formations of the Court of Appeal in this country, we toured the formations to see the National Industrial Court formations in this country so that we can know what we will advocate for and appropriate for in the subsequent year's budget. It is from this overhead. Otherwise, the only other source of funding that is the people you are going to perform the oversight on. And that has been a culture, that has been a tradition because, and the question is, how do you expect the legislature to be independent, to hold the people who are funding their oversight trip to account? That has become a challenge. So without digressing from the question, so the salary of a member was about 600 and something thousand, and I don't know what it is.
In your time.
In my time. And then but when COVID came, we decided to part with about 200, I think about one something or 200,000 as part of the National Assembly contribution towards the COVID
relief initiative.
Yes, initiative. Then the running cost per month was about 8.5 million. Running cost of the of every member as at then. Which, like I said, the travels, like I told you, like going to...
so many items bundled into it.
And so for instance, I said I regularly would go to Uyo, you understand? And then a ticket was about 100 and something.
Right.
And then, I mean, going and coming back. And then maybe going to other events. So that is not the earning of a honorable member.
So there's a whole lot of, if you like, misconception as
exactly,
to what...
Exactly. So we have to distinguish between the running costs. And there's something I want us to say here. Why I know that we hold a responsibility, we hold the mandate of the people.
Right.
They will criticize a member of the House of National Assembly has a Land Cruiser, and it becomes a topic of deliberation. But a minister will have 4 or 5 Land Cruisers plus Hilux, and we are not bringing that discourse. And so we are not discussing the earnings of a minister. We are not discussing even a DG of a parastatal has a Land Cruiser, maybe a backup vehicle for security, and a Hilux.
And nobody's talking about it.
And nobody's talking about it. So let us not keep putting the legislators on the cross and then meanwhile not holding others to account.
We need